A very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to this week's edition of The Agenda. My name is Taiwan Jabela, your host. Tonight we are extremely excited, privileged, and all that because we have our mother in the house, that is the First Lady of the Republic of Namibia, Madam Monica Geingos, to talk to us about a few things and just to fill us in. Madam First Lady, we are privileged to have you here. Truly, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me, Tuiva. I know it was difficult to arrange.
I know there's been a lot of postponements, but your determination and commitment to really, because you gave me your word that you would come, and despite maybe 2-3 postponements, you still made it, and that greatly is a good thing.
I actually wanted to cancel again, but you're right. I gave you my word, and we must keep our word.
Wonderful. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so just to get into this conversation, Madam First Lady, you've been our First Lady for the past 7 years now. It's already 7 years.
Yes.
And it was such a radical departure for you from what we had known you to be. Did you feel that as you then moved into that? And how would you just describe those 7 years so far?
It was a big departure.
Yeah.
So, as you know, I ran a private equity fund at the time. We were busy with a commercial bank called eBank.
Yes.
I was sitting on lots of boards. I was sitting on the President's Economic Advisory Council, obviously the former president.
Yes.
So it was a departure. So the last 7 years, I've grown a lot, both personally and professionally.
Yeah.
But I've also learned to understand things that I don't believe I understood as well when I was in the private sector.
Yeah.
The first being there's a lot of complexity in policy implementation and how it's made. And it is helpful to kind of see both sides now.
Yeah.
I also, many people in the private sector, shamefully, myself included, we have a perception that civil servants don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's been a privilege for me to work with so many civil servants, not ministers, civil servants, technocrats, and realize the incredible skill that is in government, and not having this assumption that everybody who works for government is incompetent and isn't passionate about their jobs.
Is it something that one can ever prepare for, to become, to excel in that space?
No. I think being First Lady isn't something you can prepare for because it's got nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
It's a function that is given to you based on marriage, and I think it's one of the last titles, which I believe are still very steeped in an old way of doing things. And I think going forward, the world will move on from spouses playing a role in the employment of their husbands. Hopefully, a world will move on where you'll find female leaders. And I don't believe their husbands will be as willing to forego their careers and make the type of sacrifices many women have made to become First Lady. And I'm not just talking about myself. Most First Ladies I know are highly educated and had careers as well, which they put on ice or which they entirely abandoned. And I think going forward, as the world moves on, this position will become less and less relevant, or the expectation that a spouse must put aside their livelihood will become less in society.
Fair enough, Madam First Lady, but I'm thinking the complexity of that, the practical side of it. I mean, for example, Madam Penelope Pohamba, she was a nurse working, I think, at a very small clinic or something like that. How do you leave State House in the morning and, go quarrel with patients and then come back home? The practicality side of it sounds complex.
Yes, but I don't think you know that the former First Lady maintained her job as a nurse for a year while being First Lady. And there's many spouses. The former UK Prime Minister, his spouse, Cherie Blair, didn't take over the role. She continued to run a law firm. So there's many examples where it has happened. But let me not ignore what you're raising. If you're a first lady and you are working, and you get into a quarrel with somebody, what is the implication of that? And it's something that is a genuine concern, but if somebody is earning a multi-million salary and has to give that up, is there compensation for that? So it's not an easy discussion.
Exactly.
It is difficult for a political spouse to be in the marketplace. But it's also difficult for this person to have an expectation with no compensation for their loss to let go of what they're doing. I was perhaps in a position to do so, but at significant financial cost to myself. Not everybody will be in that position. So it is complex, and I want to bring this complexity without an answer so that we can all chew on complexity, because in this day and age we like to oversimplify things.
I don't want to labor this point, Madam First Lady, but that is exactly why, and we'll come exactly to how that has impacted you personally. But are we compelled by law, for example, that you must quit whatever you are doing and move into that office?
I'm not compelled by law at all. I'm not even restricted by law in terms of what I can do, because I'm not a politician. I'm not a repository of power. And this is how, when I was thinking about this and the complexity that I needed to engage, I realized that it's way above my understanding. So let me get professionals in, and that's where we got PricewaterhouseCoopers in, who themselves hadn't dealt with it from a local perspective, so they brought in partners from their American offices to come and guide us, Toivo, on three things. The first is to for the sake of the public also being comforted, what is the source of our income and our assets? And they did do source verification. The second was to look at what we have in our asset base and evaluate its appropriateness. And that really answers your question. Is it appropriate or not? And then the third was to prepare our financial affairs for public release. So let's focus on the second part of their mandate, which was to determine appropriateness. When they looked at my portfolio, there was nothing in there that they were concerned about that was a real conflict of interest. They were, however, concerned. I had a very, very small holding in an entity which required a government license every 8 years. And they said there isn't a conflict of interest here, but there may be a perception of conflict of interest. Our guidance to you is dispose of that specific asset. You're sitting on a lot of boards. There's no conflict of interest with any of your holdings. But our guidance again to you is manage a perception proactively by resigning from these boards. There's 2 companies here that are in private equity and wealth management. Retain them, but only in a strategic capacity, not in an operational capacity. So I resigned. I sold. I did everything I was required to do, not because the law required it of me, because I think it was more us thinking about how do we set an example of how this is managed, because there really is no requirement. What was the alternative? That I stayed in exactly the roles I have, but then exactly what you say is, say now I come into conflict with a regulator, I come into conflict with a minister, I come into conflict with a parastatal chief based on one of these investments. It's sticky for everybody. But despite that, Toivo, I still found myself at times subjected to very unverified, non-substantial claims, rumors, if I may call it what it is. That I either benefited from a government tender, not true. That I either did this, not true. But it really never rose above the level of rumor. So I believe that the reason that it was contained to the level of rumor is really because we did those asset declarations. And where people knew what the truth was, those who were interested in the truth.
Indeed. And we'll touch on that quite in detail later in this conversation, Madam First Lady. What are some of the, I mean, obviously when you come to an office like that, you want to stamp your own identity on it, maybe not necessarily by discarding whatever has been done by your predecessors, but you also want to leave a mark of your own. What is it that you're most proud of so far in the 7 years as far as your work is concerned in that office?
So my most proud moment is really the energy and the determination of the former First Lady.
Yeah.
Because had it not been for her to ensure that there was a structure for an office of the First Lady, I wouldn't even have staff members. So I'm proud of having a structure, but I had nothing to do with that. It was really shaped for me by the leadership and the tenacity of the former First Lady. But what I'm very proud of is I think we set out to do a couple of things as the office of the First Lady with a very young team, Toivo. And this young team has just shut the lights out. What they've managed to do, simply by being placed in a position of trust, we have been able to take a program, for instance, called Be Free, that looks at youth development from a different perspective. And not only have we able to run very successful programs, we're also able to institutionalize it so it doesn't stop with the office of the First Lady. There's literally a building going up that is going to cost us between 24 to 40 million Namibian dollars. 24 because that's what we're going to pay in the next 2 years. But there's a couple of other phases where we'll add more money. So that building to me is a big source of pride because it tells me this work that these young people have done will persist after 2025. I'm very proud of that. I'm also very proud of I'm proud of all the programs. I'm going to keep you busy the whole day, but I just want to highlight just two quick things that I'm very proud of. There's 28 children we took into a program called the Talented Individual Program, where we took highly talented young Namibians with good marks, not necessarily the best marks, with good marks, but not the best circumstances. And we said to ourselves, let us put these kids into the same schools my children will go to. So we put them into Windhoek High School, we put them into Windhoek Gymnasium. We took them in grade 8. We provided them with medical cover, pharmaceutical assistance, and this was provided to us for free by Kuma's Medical Services, by Victoria Pharmacy. We were able to give them 350 Namibian dollars in pocket money every month. Every single term when they needed to go home, we paid for that. If any of them required any form of psychological or mental health support, we paid for the necessary professionals to provide that. Obviously, we paid for hostels and tuition. If they had a talent or a passion, whether it was drama, whether it was, some of them excelled at rugby, others excelled at athletics, we paid for the kits, we paid for tours to South Africa, across the country. Really anything that they were interested in, we supported like a parent would support. 23 of those 28 children have basically finished their AS. Many of them have already, just yesterday I saw student cards, medical faculty, science faculty. These kids are doing well. They've finished, they've matriculated. And that is to us what One Economy is about, taking people who are in the second economy and preparing them to participate in the first economy. So I'm very, very proud of that. But mostly I'm proud of the team at the Office of the First Lady and the programs that it runs, because they are the ones who make sure that the vision that I've articulated is translated into what I just described now.
Indeed. And that is, I remember vividly the initiative of that involved those kids. And as a matter of fact, I had completely lost track of it, because it would have been nice also as a media to follow up and say, you know, we attended the launch. What has happened since then? So it's a good update. You spoke briefly about the sacrifices that you had to make, the hard decisions that you had to make in order to. Is this the price of love that you have to sacrifice so much from your business side of things just to be in conformity with some of these perceptions?
So I'm glad you brought that in, because I think many people undervalue that. So it would be unfair of me to talk about sacrifice without talking about the immense privilege that it's been. It's been an opportunity to serve Namibian people And in retrospect, in my previous life, I was really serving myself a lot. I personally did very well, but the benefits didn't really flow as widely as they currently are. So there's an immense privilege and an honor to serve. And I'm glad I've had that immense honor and privilege. And that immense privilege and honor comes about because of what I said later. It's through marriage. But if I have to have made a decision to get married earlier to Hage, not the president, to Hage, the person, not the position, not the president, not the title, I would have done it earlier. He's a fantastic husband. And I've also personally learned so much from him. So he's always been a good friend, but I'm privileged to be married to my best friend. So that to me has made everything worth it, because there's a point where you have to say to yourself, I've got a nice balance sheet, I'm doing well professionally, but personally, it's lonely. Personally, it feels a bit unfulfilling that there isn't somebody to talk about all these fantastic things that you're doing during the day, in the evening. And I have that now. And I think that makes all of it worth it.
And what kind of knock had your businesses taken out of as a result of that? Because I know that as a businesswoman, you've been very hands-on. I personally happen to have witnessed some of that myself before you became First Lady, being hands-on on business and all that. And obviously, when the boss is not around as much, around the block as much, there's an element of complacency that can trickle in.
Yes.
How has it been?
I think for the one business where I was operationally involved, I had been in that role for about 10 years. And in retrospect, I think it was a good thing, because I think you get to a point where you're in a place so long where you don't see opportunities as quickly as others do. So the people who did come in to replace, immediately within a year saw an opportunity that I suspect, had it been me, I would have said, no, I don't think it will work. So I think the business actually benefited from this change of guard. I think being in any position for too long is not a good thing.
Yes.
So I think even in the private sector, there should be term limits.
Sure. No, I swear.
But I think where it did impact a balance sheet, when you're a shareholder, you benefit from capital, dividends that flow to you. When you are working operationally, you benefit from income, which is taxable. But it's an annual income, which is quite substantial in the roles that I was fulfilling. That income is gone entirely. My inability to take on anything new, in terms of being a shareholder, impacted my ability to build a capital base. So then the third part is none of those businesses that I've been exposed to have been unaffected by the economic decline that we've all seen. It's impacted us materially. So I'm affected by that. So somebody else, had I not been in this role, would have been able to say, okay, wow, things are really collapsing here, but let me quickly pursue this part so that I can at least bring in a new revenue source. Whereas now, if this income source collapses, I can't institute anything else. I just have to accept that loss and move on. It's not difficult to quantify, because you can see it in how much tax I pay now relative to how much I used to pay, and how much income is generally flowing into my accounts compared to normal. But in a few people's perception, I'm one of the wealthiest people in this country. Nothing is further from the truth. There's been substantial value destruction on my personal balance sheet. And a lot of it unrelated to being First Lady, but very deeply connected to the performance of the economy. Where it's related to my position as First Lady is because I haven't been able to replace it with anything else.
Indeed. We go for a quick break and then return shortly with First Lady Monica Geingos.
Choose your flex package with Paratus today. Sign up for ultra-fast fiber with the convenience of mobile LTE. That's 2 products in 1 bundle. It's new, it's 1 bill, and you can stay connected in more than 1 location.
For more information, visit paratus.africa/NA.
Always prepared. Paratus.
We continue our conversation with Madam Monica Geingos. She is our First Lady here in Namibia. You touched on a very thorny issue around your wealth. And, you know, in 2015, something magical happened. You and your husband, without requirement in law,
Yes.
Declared your assets. And there were promises that this will become a regular occurrence.
Correct.
It hasn't happened again since then, for 7 years. What happened there?
So what happened is that we did a quick review because it was our intention to do an asset declaration right after his second term.
Yes.
But then we realized how illogical it is because a declaration should actually happen before, while he's still at the end of his first term. And the reason for that is there should never be an assumption you'll be voted in for a second term.
Yeah, sure.
So once we were already in the second term, then we had to think about the cost in 2015 of doing asset declarations. It was material. And because it was a voluntary exercise, we had to bear that cost ourselves.
Yes.
And when I say material amount that we had to pay, I mean material amount. So we thought to ourselves, what was our intention behind the voluntary declarations? We wanted to show the public what we own, what we are exposed to before we came into office. And we also want to show the public what we own and what we are exposed to before we leave. So is there any value in incurring this humongous cost in 2021 when we are going to have to do it again in 2025?
Yeah.
So our decision is that we will retain our intention of doing an asset declaration in the beginning and just before the end, because the intent is that the public must see for themselves whether we became poorer or wealthier as a consequence of these roles. And I don't think the intention is in any way diluted. I think it was pure pragmatism. But I also think what we realized suggests to me, and I'm not saying I'm right, but it created an opinion in my mind that this should not be a voluntary exercise. It should be legislated. And it should be legislated that when you come in and just before you leave, you should be obligated to do this. If you come in again because your citizenry has decided to bestow you the honor of serving again, then you can go through this exercise again.
So it wasn't a case of your wealth having grown exponentially so much that to come out to the public and flag it will raise so many problems, especially with the challenges that we are facing.
I can tell you as a matter of fact, there's substantial degradation. So if anything, the public was going to say, my goodness, this has not been very lucrative for them. So the opposite has happened, and I won't deny it. Definitely what you saw in 2015 and what you'll see now in 2022. If I had to do a declaration right now, and my matters aren't complicated. It's easy to do a declaration. There is substantial value destruction. I can tell you that as a matter of fact.
Okay. No. Now, there is, towards the end of last year, there was this paper. Let me just, you must have seen it. You follow the discourse quite well. There's this paper by Dr. Job Amupanda from the University of Namibia titled Namibia's First Lady, Monica Geingos, Beyond the Orthodox First Lady Setting. And he is assessing your role from 2015 to 2020. Now, in this letter, he cites a lot of things. I took 4 examples. What he's trying to say is that he's scrutinizing your influence in government, perceived or real. He is talking about how you announced in 2014, before you became First Lady, of course, that Dr. John Steitler, a very good friend of mine, is going to serve on the board of EBank. You mentioned EBank earlier on. And he goes on to also talk about Yvonne Dausab, who is now the Minister of Justice, also as Vice Chairperson. No, she was not. It was John who was, Dr. Steitler who was Vice Chairperson. Yvonne Dausab was also serving on that board. He talks about how Dr. Steitler became an advisor to the president, to your husband later. Yvonne Dausab becoming the head of the Law Reform and Development Commission and now a Minister of Justice, goes to talk about Penny.
I'm sorry, I think she was already Law Reform Commission by the time she was on EBank.
Was that? Okay, okay. I think...
I speak at the
Okay, yeah, no, we'll address that. And then he talks about Geingob's, that is not your husband, Geingob's advisor on policy implementation and monitoring, Penny Akwenye, worked very closely with Geingos, that is you. And
where did he work closely with me? I'm just trying to establish.
Yeah, he says...
where does he say we work together?
Let me just read the series. Worked very closely with Geingos. No, he's saying she worked closely with an associate of yours, that is, with your technical advisor, as a matter of fact, Tulimevava Ngionanye. So he's not saying that you're close to Meme Akwenye, but that she is close to your technical advisor.
But when she was appointed as advisor to the president, was Tulimevava in my office?
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And then the last example that is cited as he tries to drive his point home was in 2017, Chekratwea, the Minister of Information, fired businessman Ali Angola, businesswoman, sorry, Ali Angola is board chairperson of MPTH, and he paid a price now, Chekratwea, by being fired by your husband as minister. Did you read this document, maybe even parts of it, and what did you make of it when you just read some of it?
So I was very excited that there was going to be some academic write-ups on this role of First Lady.
Yes.
And what we'd achieved, because my immediate assumption is that it was going to be objective.
Yes.
I was deeply disappointed when I realized it's taking a political tone and not an academic tone.
Yeah.
And one thing, I mean, right at the beginning, he says I was born in 1977 in Orangimund. I was born in 1976 at Onanjokwe Hospital, which is 1,800 kilometers from Orangimund. So these are two facts that are undisputable. And in an academic report, you'd assume some rigor in verifying facts.
Yes.
But that's a small, insubstantial point. But to me, it was reflective of the absolute lackadaisical approach that the academic part took in this paper. And the reason I checked with each of you those allegations, because they're not even allegations, I apologize for using that word wrongly, that rumor mongering. Because Yvonne is somebody before she came onto EBank on the board. I didn't even have her cell phone number. We were not friends. I wouldn't categorize her even now as a friend. I don't visit her, she doesn't visit me, and she's closer to her boss who appointed her. And they've always been closer than my relationship. How Yvonne got onto the board of EBank was that, and I'll tell you the story because that's exactly what happened. I don't see Yvonne regularly. I bumped into her, I was doing grocery shopping in a shop called Super Spa, and she said she wants to sit on a few more boards. And I was like, well, we're actually looking for a legal person on a board. Let me put the name as part of the other names that I put forward. That's how she came onto EBank. John Steitler was an active player at that point in the financial sector. Everybody knew and respected him. And his name didn't just come from me, it came from 3 other board members. Who was the other person?
It was your technical advisor.
Penny.
Yes, Penny.
Penny's appointment as an economic advisor is something I knew nothing about. I barely know Penny. We haven't interacted. I don't have her cell phone number. We don't really engage. I respect her. But we're not friends, nor have I any interest in influencing an appointment in favor or against her. Her relationship with Thuli Mevava has nothing to do with her appointment. Ali was appointed to the board of NPTH before I was First Lady. Her being let go from that board had nothing to do with me. The relationship between somebody I know and an appointing authority, where do I get involved? Now, why I'm systematically going through each rumor is to ask you, what is the factual basis that based on these very flimsy grounds, this basic rumor mongering, on what basis can you take a rumor? It gets put to me. Now the burden of proving that it's not true, I'm not influencing executive appointments, falls on me. It doesn't fall on the person who makes this rumor to provide the factual basis of why are you saying that she had Penny appointed? On what basis are you alleging that Ali's firing at NPTH had anything to do with me? On what basis does John becoming an economic advisor, given his profile, had anything to do with me? On what basis me sitting on a board with somebody and that person ends up in government? It's my work. I've sat on countless boards. I think he even raised another name. I suspect it was the Bank of Namibia governor. Apparently because we sat together on the President's Economic Advisory Board, that's why he's now governor. This is a person who was offered an executive appointment as far back in President Pohamba's presidency. Was that me? And why I'm raising this, Toivo, is that I really want to encourage media houses, but also those who purport to be our public intellectuals, to apply some rigor to the things that they say. We must stop elevating rumor mongering. And there's some people who have become rumor connoisseurs. When they are not manufacturing the rumors themselves, they're spreading it. But they're also forcing our media houses to become inadvertent spreaders of rumors. Because now, he who alleges must prove. Now, instead, we live in a society, somebody can say, Monica is an alien. Now, the burden of proof shifts to me to cut myself, to prove that I bleed red. I'm a human being, I'm not an alien. Now, if I keep on cutting myself, I'm going to be so scarred because I'm assuming a burden of proof that is not mine. Let us have a factual basis to answer very legitimate questions. If these things were true, they're very serious and they must be addressed, but there must be a factual basis. And we must distinguish between a rumor and an allegation or a perception. A rumor doesn't gain any relevance or credibility because it was put into a so-called academic paper. It remains a rumor. And a rumor shouldn't then be put to me to disprove a rumor created by somebody else. Let that person say why they believe I appointed Mepeni and I'm interfering with the president's responsibilities. It's simply not true, but the burden shouldn't be applied to me because it's also becoming a norm. I used to, it stopped now, but in the beginning I used to get lots of these long questions from journalists. We hear that you were in Angola doing what and what. No, I wasn't in Angola. Let the person who told you I was in Angola give you the evidence of me being in Angola. I wasn't in Angola. So people make things up and then they expect you to cut yourself each time, proving that I'm also a human being. So I really want us to elevate our national discourse, and I believe that kind of behavior really cheapens it.
You're making a very good point, Madam First Lady, on the burden, and I suppose also how we in the media have the approach that we have to news, that confirmation must come from you, confirmation of very damaging and sometimes very far off allegations, that now that burden of saying, no, I was in Angola, like you put it, is on you. Which brings me to my next question, because you've gone through a lot. I follow silently from my corner how you always have to defend yourself. from so many allegations, I mean, when people were putting up, for
rumors.
example... yeah, rumors.
Yes. An allegation has a factual basis.
Yeah, sure.
A rumor is unverified. And
because a rumor, one of them was, for example, when MTC was being listed,
yes,
you had to go to Twitter and put a very nicely, technically explained reason why it was not even technically possible for you to be involved in acquiring equities in MTC. But I think the latest was, of course, your recent court case.
Yes.
Which you won soundly against Abed Ishono. I'm just wondering, Madam First Lady, if that particular case was an accumulation of something that has been long time coming.
Yes.
That you go through so much abuse, so much mud being thrown at you, and that was a build-up. That was a result of an accumulated build-up of anger.
Yes.
Or was it strictly an isolated case?
It was exactly, so it wasn't a build-up of anger. I don't get angry at rumor mongers and rumor mongering. Yeah. But it was a build-up. And the danger that I started to recognize with the West Air rumor, which the person who was sued was not the creator of that rumor. Yeah. He was not. The danger that particular West Air rumor created for me is because I didn't engage it. Yeah. People started to use my silence as confirmation of its veracity. And that case was really because many people believed that I was a shareholder in West Air, and accordingly, I influenced Air Namibia's liquidation. Not a shareholder, didn't influence. Yeah. There was never a factual engagement there, or any effort for someone to say, let me go find out if she's a shareholder. People just ran with the story. And I'm hoping after this case, people will start to challenge those who bring them stories and say, how do you know this for sure? Yeah. What evidence do you have? Because that's really the question you'll be asked in court. What evidence do you have? And I think as many people are condemning the person who was sued, I hope they don't forget to ask themselves, how did you play a role in pushing around this rumor? Because if I'm sure you heard the story, do you remember who started it? You don't. I'm sure you can't even remember who told you. Yeah, sure. You heard the story, it became almost fact in your mind. Yeah. And I think that's really what I want to say, is that we must stop taking rumors and elevating them, number one, to allegations. But we must also stop making the person who's being accused responsible to provide proof that, no, actually, I'm not. And the dangerous thing here, too, if I want to give some context, is that every single rumor I've seen in the public domain, some of them are just fabrications, like somebody literally made this up. Not some of them, many of them. Then there's a few of these rumors where there's about 10% truth. Where was the 10% truth in the West Air story, for instance? The 10% truth is that in 2004, 2005, in 2005, the company that I was a shareholder in bought into West Air. It's not me buying into West Air. The company I was a shareholder of bought into West Air. I was the managing director of that company as well. On the 11th of February, 2011, that same company that I was the managing director of sold shares in West Air Maintenance. We were never involved in the West Air Aviation that owned aircraft. We were only involved, and I think our holding was about 25.1%. We were only involved in West Air Maintenance, which did the maintenance of aircraft. And I make this distinction because this entity that we were invested in could have never competed with Air Namibia, because it never owned any aircraft. Be that as it may, we sold 11 years ago, before I even became First Lady. How did a rumor then become a fact that I'm a West Air shareholder? Because it was public information when we bought in, but it was also public information when we sold. Stimulus has a listed preference on the stock exchange. Every year, we publish our annual financial statements. In that year, in 2011, we have sold West Air. The following year, at our annual presentations to investors, we told them again, we've sold our investments in West Air. In my 2015 asset declaration, I went through all of the entities that Stimulus owns. West Air is not there. So there was enough publicly available information that confirmed I wasn't there. In addition to that, the first time this allegation surfaced, or rumor surfaced, was in 2017. A newspaper asked me about it. I responded. And I said to them, we sold this equity. I remember in 2018, I said it again on social media. In 2019 again, another newspaper asked me. I confirmed it again. So there has been consistent public refutation from my perspective. This is not true, but somehow it just, but I say 2017, Toivo, because in 2017 is most of those rumors started in 2017. What happened in 2017? It was SWAPO Congress. So a lot of this rumor mongering is associated with political processes. Most of the rumors I've experienced was in 2014, when Hage and I decided to get married. It was in 2017, where there was a Congress. 2019, where there was a very, very emotive national election.
2022?
And 2022, I'm hoping to rest. But I probably won't. But I mention this is because our rumor mongering is associated with our political cycles. And now it's starting to diffuse itself into how we engage as human beings. Because now I'm seeing people not in the political realm also being subjected to this kind of rumor mongering. And it's not fair. And I think fundamentally as well, Toivo, and imagine somebody as acclaimed as John Steitler, who was acclaimed before he sat on eBank's board, now being told in a paper that's published worldwide that the only reason he became the president's economic advisor is because he sat on the board with a spouse. It's disrespectful.
The man worked for IMF, he worked for IMF,
Absolutely.
He worked for the Central Bank.
He was the chief economist at Bank Windhoek. It's so disrespectful.
I hear you.
And it dilutes the reputations of those people who were named there. The same with somebody as highly regarded as Yvonne. The same as Mayor Penny, who worked at MCA, has ran an entire career without my assistance or involvement or knowledge. Now they are being reduced to objects and being told the only reason these people got appointed is because they know the First Lady. I think if you don't want to be respectful to me, at least be respectful to these individuals who've worked so hard to be where they are today.
Indeed. First Lady, we go for the last break and then return for the last stretch of the show.
Thank you.
We continue with the last part of our show with First Lady Monica Geingos. Now, Madam First Lady, one of the rumors, rumors, I'm trying now to allegation and
Thank you, I appreciate it.
So I'm learning very well. Is that there's also this perception that you have political ambitions. Is there any credibility to that?
So again, I've been on public record countless times. I do not want to be a politician. I do not harbor political ambition. You'll remember before I became First Lady, I think there was an article in the Namibian Sun, there was an article in the Namibian, there was an article in the Windhoek Observer, in many papers, when President Pohamba was going into his second term, that I was going to become the next Minister of Finance or that I'm being considered for his cabinet. Yeah. Before people knew of my relationship with Hage, there was also rumors that I was going to go into his executive as a minister. I never had anything to do with those rumors. People would always try and see, okay, who are the likely people to be appointed? My name has always been one of those names that have been assumed I'll go into the executive. I've always said I have no plans of being a politician. And I don't know why I'm being ignored when I say this. I haven't changed my mind. Yeah. If I ever change my mind, which is unlikely, I'll be the first one to say it, because I'm not a person who hides my ambition. When I want something, I make it clear, this is what I want. You can never achieve something in life when you hide what you want. We've lost lots of friends, Toivo, and people we know, because they were around us with unarticulated desires, where they had an expectation, but it's unarticulated. Yeah. So when it doesn't materialize, they're frustrated. I articulate my desires. When I want something, I say, this is what I want. I don't want to be a politician. Do you want to know why?
Yes.
Because I'm not a politician.
Because you're not a politician.
Politicians are born. They are not normal people. Yeah. Leadership is God-given. Yeah. It's not what we fight for. I feel I understand my God-given purpose on this world. Yeah. I do not believe it to be a politician. I think I can still be impactful and be of service to this nation without being a politician.
Well, I think most of the time, or sometimes when this is being speculated, it's in good faith. Yes. People thinking that you have something good to offer to our political landscape. Yes. But even that doesn't distract you from your ambitions. You want to stay away from that.
I'm a bit convinced that politicians also need people like me away from the politics. Yeah. And you've raised something important. Again, this specific rumor started a bit negatively. It was a 2017 rumor that was created to delegitimize Hage's leadership. Yeah. To say basically his wife has usurped his powers. She's too influential. What kind of influential meddling first lady is this? But it was more criticizing him to say he's a bad leader because he allows his wife to interfere. Now, do you see the trend? They want to delegitimize him, but they come and attack me. And this is normal. I'm sure even your mom has experienced it. Yes. Maybe a neighbor wants to say something about your father, but then she says, the man is fine, it's the wife who's bad. So that's what happens. Every woman goes through this. Yeah, yeah. The husband is okay, it's the wife who's the problem. And this is really what's happening to me. It's a social trend. Yeah. So generally, there was this little function, and that's where these foolish allegations come from. Yeah, yeah. She is the one who appointed Steytler to Economic Advisory Council. She is the one. It's not really an attack on me. It's trying to delegitimize a legitimate leader. So let them now start attacking that person and not me. Let them leave me out, because this became the trend. But by far, I also know people who love me, who respect me, and who always say to me, please go into politics. Yeah. And it's out of love and respect. It's not the small group that's out of malice. Yeah. So I also have started to see the compliment in people saying, you should be a politician. I've started to see it as a compliment. It's people who believe I have something to offer. And I always try to convince them I have something to offer outside of politics as well. Yeah. And as a society, we must all take responsibility for our political, economic, and social order. Yeah. We all have a role to play. And you don't only have to be a politician to be somebody who can make a consequential difference in the area that you play. You have made a consequential difference on the media landscape in Namibia. Are you a politician, Toivo?
I'm not.
Do you plan on being a politician?
Never.
There we go.
There we go. Now, linked to that, Madam First Lady, what is it that you plan on doing when the shackles of public office are taken off, maybe 2025 or so? How do you move on with your life now and become Monica Geingos again?
One of my challenges, one of the things that frustrates people who know me is everything you tell me, I'll ask you, but what's your plan? Even with my kids. My youngest is 21, turning 22 in April. And she's in that phase of young people. And she gets tired of me when I ask her, what's your plan? So I always have a plan. And I'll say this to you for the first time, is one of the things that I'm doing right now, because it's part of my plan, is I'm studying for a Master's in Development Finance. And the reason I'm doing the Master's in Development Finance is not because I think I need it. It's just that I think that my brain just needs some refreshing on certain topics. Once I've finished with this Master's in Development Finance, I plan to continue studying. And that enables me to do a transition in 2025 where I focus more on my studies than anything else as I just rediscover myself. So that's part of where I transition out. Also in 2025, we've got lots of programs with a foundation that I'm busy with at the moment. And I'll be working towards that. If you're wondering whether I'm going to the private sector, the answer is likely no. I'm unlikely to ever go back into any operational day-to-day position. Why? My husband, in 2025, his age will have advanced. I need to be there for him. And I need to structure whatever my plans are around him somewhat so that I can do what I enjoy doing, but also be there for him forever. Because that's the commitment that I made, and I'm a person of commitment. So my plan is I would like to see myself as some kind of reformed capitalist, where I've seen that it's good to be in the private sector, but it's best to try and apply your skill that you've learned in the private sector in the public sector. You do not need to be a politician to do national good. So I'll continue to do national good through the One Economy Foundation, because I think that's where my heart lies. And to me, everything is about passion. You must enjoy what you're doing. I enjoy doing that. I enjoy working with young people. So that will be a core part of what I do. Another part of the plan is to sit on not too many boards, but also boards with a focus on social impact, both locally and internationally. Right now, as I sit here, I'm already sitting on international boards of global social impact, which I'm very proud of the work that they do. And I keep on getting offered to sit on more. And I'll probably do that. That will be the strategic work that I do, but there must be an element of social impact and social good in the boards that I sit, both internationally and locally.
Indeed. The last question then to you, Madam First Lady, is how is Hage Geingob? Not the president?
Yes.
Your husband?
He's a great guy. he's you know, he, after many people have met him, they'll say to me, he's so normal. He's such a funny guy. Because I think the Hage Geingob that you see in public is the president. The Hage Geingob we see and love, and I say we, is because there's many of us. Hage Geingob has many people who respect and who love him. He's also a president. He's also the leader of a political party. So he'll also have people who either, as a function of being in divergence to what he believes in, who will attack him, who don't respect. But those people, to me, are fewer than the people who respect and love him, and that's why he's president. So the person is a person who's exceptionally generous, I think over-generous. It's a person who doesn't suffer from unforgiveness, so he's very forgiving. He wouldn't be where he is today if he didn't forgive people. He's a person who's very consultative. And this is, again, also goes against the story that the wife is running everything. Hage is consultative. There's many things I just see in the paper, but I know that he's been running a very big consultative process with many other people. Fourthly, he's not just a politician. I think he's also a scholar of sorts. He's a political scientist. His PhD is in state formation.
Yes.
So if there's anybody equipped to be the leader of this nation right now, it is him. But that Hage Geingob is also paying a price for the political role he plays at a personal level, because he's also a father, and he's a good father. He loves his kids. He'll do anything for his children, but his children also suffer as a consequence of his job.
Yes.
There's one of his child that literally carries his name. That's a burden. So we forget often that this is a human being. He's also a father, a good father. He's a husband, a good husband.
Yeah.
He is an uncle. He is a grandfather, a grumpy grandfather, but he's a grandfather and a good grandfather. And he's a great friend. He's a great and loyal friend.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I see him with the people he's come so long with, I admire the strength of their friendship. So he's also a teacher, literally and figuratively. He was literally a teacher in Sumeb, but he also teaches us new things every day. There's things I think I understood, but he's taught me differently. So he's a teacher as well. But all in all, I think he's a statesman.
Yeah.
He understands the role that he has to play in the moment that he has to play it.
Yeah.
And his blood pressure doesn't rise, it doesn't drop. He knows what this is about.
Madam First Lady, thank you very much for your time. Really, we appreciate it, and for the beautiful conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and for being so patient.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was First Lady Monica Geingos speaking to us about those topical issues. I hope you enjoyed the show like I did. Good night.